Directed by Jeremy Gillespie and Steven Kostanski, The Void is an indie cosmic horror gem that channels the grotesque spirit of John Carpenter and Clive Barker. It opens with a routine night in a rural hospital where a police officer brings in an injured man, only for reality to unravel in the most nightmarish way possible. Soon, strange figures in white robes begin surrounding the building, and people inside start experiencing bizarre visions and monstrous transformations. What follows is an escalating descent into body horror and interdimensional chaos, as the hospital becomes ground zero for something much larger than any human comprehension. What makes The Void stand out is its practical effects and minimalist storytelling. The grotesque creature designs, inspired by The Thing and Hellraiser, feel tangible and viscerally real. Though made on a modest budget and with limited theatrical release, The Void gained cult status for its ambition and unrelenting dread. It never fully explains what The Void is, only that once you've seen it, you're never coming back whole. Directed by Andrew Lemon, The Call of Cthulhu is a unique entry in the genre, not just because it's a faithful adaptation of H.P. Lovecraft's iconic short story, but because it's shot as a silent film in the styles of 1920s cinema. Black and white, silent, and stylized to match the era the story was written in, the film recreates the creeping dread of Lovecraft's most famous creation in a form that feels like it was pulled straight from the past. The narrative follows a professor unraveling a series of disturbing reports, cults worshipping an ancient being, strange carvings, and the madness of those who witness it. Piece by piece, he uncovers the story of Cthulhu, a slumbering god whose mere presence can drive people insane. Unlike most modern horror, The Call of Cthulhu never relies on jump scares or gore. The horror here is existential, about forbidden knowledge, the insignificance of mankind, and what lurks just beyond the veil of perception. Produced by the H.P. Lovecraft Historical Society, the film was made on a small budget, but has been praised for its authenticity and atmosphere. It's a rare example of cosmic horror that understands its source material so well, it changes how we see adaptations altogether. Based on a novella by Stephen King and directed by Frank Darabont, The Mist starts with a simple premise. A mysterious fog rolls into a small town, trapping a group of people inside a grocery store. But what's in the mist is anything but simple. Otherworldly creatures from another dimension, brought into our world by a military experiment gone wrong. The horror of The Mist is twofold. On one hand, you've got tentacled monsters, spider beasts, and winged terrors stalking the fog. On the other, you've got the people inside, paranoid, terrified, and increasingly violent. As society breaks down, religious fanaticism takes hold, and the fear of the unknown turns the survivors against each other. Shot on an $18 million budget, the film was praised for its bleak tone, strong ensemble cast, and practical effects. It's the infamously brutal ending that made it unforgettable. Darabont changed the story's original conclusion to something far darker, one that polarized audiences but perfectly captured the despair and futility that defines cosmic horror. Directed by Paul W.S. Anderson, Event Horizon blends science fiction with cosmic horror in a way that still divides audiences decades later. The story follows a rescue crew sent to investigate the Event Horizon, a spaceship that mysteriously reappears after vanishing without a trace. Designed to test faster-than-light travel, the ship was supposed to create a wormhole through space. Instead, it opened a door to something far more terrifying. The crew quickly realizes that the ship has returned from a place beyond comprehension, a dimension of pure chaos, suffering, and malevolent intelligence. The Event Horizon itself becomes a character, almost sentient, manipulating their minds, exposing their deepest traumas, and slowly turning them against each other. While the film includes traditional sci-fi elements like gravity drives and technical jargon, it's steeped in cosmic dread. There's no alien monster to fight. The true enemy is the unknown void that lies beyond our reality, and the way it corrupts human consciousness. That's what makes Event Horizon so deeply unsettling. Though it flopped upon release and was heavily edited due to graphic content, Event Horizon has since gained a cult following, and while the film doesn't name its horrors, fans of Lovecraft immediately recognize the influence. Directed by Richard Stanley and based on Lovecraft's short story of the same name, Color Out of Space brings cosmic terror to the family farm. The film stars Nicolas Cage as Nathan Gardner, whose rural life is turned upside down when a glowing meteorite crashes near his home, leaking a color unlike any seen on Earth and infecting everything it touches. The horror here is slow, surreal, and deeply unsettling. Plants and animals begin to mutate. Time feels distorted. The family starts losing their grip on reality, emotionally, physically, and mentally. The color becomes a kind of alien infection, not through creatures or invaders, but through distortion of natural laws themselves. Shot in bright, hypersaturated tones with excellent practical effects, the film is as beautiful as it is disturbing. Cage's performance teeters between comical and tragic, which oddly fits the tone of the movie, absurd and horrifying all at once. Stanley's return to directing after decades of absence added to the film's mythos, and it quickly became a standout in modern Lovecraftian cinema. Color Out of Space doesn't rely on monsters or jump scares. Its horror comes from the realization that something incomprehensible is rewriting reality itself, and there's absolutely nothing you can do to stop it. Directed by David Pryor, The Empty Man is a slow-burning descent into cosmic horror that disguises itself as a supernatural urban legend movie. The film opens with a group of hikers in Bhutan discovering a skeletal figure inside a cave. One of them falls into a catatonic trance. From there, the story jumps to the US, where a former cop investigates the disappearance of a teenage girl. What starts as a search and rescue mystery gradually reveals a conspiracy involving thought forms, alternate realities, and a consciousness-devouring entity known as the Empty Man. The deeper the investigation goes, the more fractured reality becomes. People behave like they're being watched, or controlled. The world itself begins to unravel. The brilliance of the Empty Man lies in its layering. It blends folklore, detective noir, and philosophical dread, all building toward the idea that the protagonist might not be a man chasing the truth. He might be a vessel, created by the truth, to house something far older than human memory. Released quietly by a studio that didn't know how to market it, the film was initially overlooked. But once it hit streaming, it found a devoted fanbase who praised its ambition, complexity, and creeping sense of doom. Its 22-minute prologue is often considered one of the best cold opens in recent horror. Directed by John Carpenter, In the Mouth of Madness is the final chapter of his unofficial Apocalypse trilogy, and it dives headfirst into Lovecraftian horror. The film stars Sam Neill as John Trent, an insurance investigator hired to locate a missing horror novelist named Sutter Kane, whose books are rumored to have strange effects on readers. As Trent journeys to find Kane, he stumbles into a town that may or may not exist, filled with warped people, impossible geography, and increasingly bizarre events. The deeper he investigates, the more he loses touch with reality. And the terrifying revelation? Kane's writing is reshaping the world, and Trent may be just another character in his next book. The film constantly plays with the idea that belief is power. If enough people believe something, does it become real? And if it does become real, who decides where the story ends? Carpenter's direction leans into surreal visuals and mind-bending logic loops, creating a walking nightmare where even the protagonist's thoughts are no longer his own. Though underappreciated during its initial release, the film has been re-evaluated as one of the most accurate cinematic expressions of cosmic horror. Directed by Robert Eggers, The Lighthouse is a psychological horror film that explores isolation, identity, and the breakdown of reality. It stars Willem Dafoe and Robert Pattinson as two lighthouse keepers assigned to a remote New England island in the 1890s. Cut off from the world, the men begin to lose track of time, memory, and eventually their sense of self. The film is shot in black and white, with a square aspect ratio, which adds to the claustrophobic atmosphere. As the story progresses, strange occurrences begin to mount. Seagulls behave aggressively. The light in the tower becomes an object of obsession. Visions of sea creatures and distorted memories start to surface. While the film appears to focus on two men unraveling due to cabin fever, its deeper themes suggest a cosmic scale of influence. There's no clear explanation for what's happening. The film avoids giving answers. The horror comes from the idea that the universe is not just uncaring, but actively incomprehensible. The Lighthouse was praised for its performances and visual style. It draws heavily from maritime folklore and early 20th century horror literature, especially stories that question reality and human significance. It does not rely on gore or violence. The horror is internal, slow, and relentless. Directed by Alex Garland and based on the novel by Jeff Vandermeer, Annihilation is a science fiction horror film that deals with identity, transformation, and the limits of human understanding. The story follows a team of scientists entering a mysterious zone known as the Shimmer, a quarantined area where the laws of nature no longer apply. Inside the Shimmer, DNA mutates across species. Time becomes unreliable. Individuals begin to question their memories, bodies, and even their personalities. The landscape is beautiful but disturbing. A bear can scream with the voice of its last victim. Flowers grow in human patterns. Everything is changing into something new. The team enters in search of answers, but finds none. One by one, they're either consumed, transformed, or broken. The lead character, played by Natalie Portman, reaches the source, a lighthouse, only to encounter a non-verbal, non-human being that mimics her every move. With a budget of $40 to $55 million, Annihilation was visually ambitious and thematically dense. It struggled at the box office, but was embraced by fans of philosophical science fiction and cosmic dread. The film's climax perfectly captured the heart of the genre, that the real horror lies not in death, but in transformation and incomprehension. Directed by John Carpenter, The Thing is a landmark in science fiction and horror. Set in an isolated Antarctic research station, The film follows a group of scientists who discover that a shape-shifting alien has infiltrated their camp. It can imitate any living organism perfectly. No one knows who's still human. The story begins when a dog, chased by a helicopter, is brought into the base. Soon after, people begin to act strangely. When the creature is revealed, it's grotesque, violent, and constantly changing form. It doesn't speak. It doesn't have a clear motive. It survives by absorbing and copying other life forms. The fear in the thing comes from mistrust and paranoia. The men are trapped in a frozen environment, unable to escape or contact the outside world. As they begin to turn on each other, the viewer is left questioning who's still real. The special effects by Rob Bottin set a new standard in body horror. Everything is done practically, without CGI, giving the transformations a disturbingly physical presence. The final scenes offers no answers, just uncertainty. At the time of its release, the film was not a commercial success. Critics were harsh. Over time, however, it's been re-evaluated as one of the greatest horror films ever made. Its portrayal of alien intelligence isn't evil, but indifferent. It behaves according to a logic that humans can't understand. Directed by Stuart Gordon and based on a short story by H.P. Lovecraft, From Beyond explores the dangers of tampering with perception. The plot centers on a machine called the Resonator, a device that stimulates the pineal gland and allows users to see into another dimension. The problem is that the things from that dimension can also see them. After an experiment goes wrong, one scientist is killed and another is mutated. A psychologist and a detective join the investigation, but once the Resonator is activated again, reality starts to collapse. The characters begin to experience hallucinations, physical changes, and attacks from creatures that exist just beyond ordinary human senses. The horror in From Beyond is both psychological and physical. The film shows how a small shift in perception can unleash something uncontrollable. The visual effects are heavily reliant on slime, prosthetics, and practical gore. The tone is aggressive and surreal. While the film includes some campy elements, it stays true to Lovecraft's theme of hidden worlds that humans are not meant to access. From Beyond is not a mainstream hit, but it gained cult status among fans of body horror and Lovecraft adaptations. It shows how easily the line between curiosity and catastrophe can be crossed when humans reach into areas they were never meant to explore. Directed by Suzanne Bier and based on the novel by Josh Malerman, Bird Box presents a world overrun by invisible entities that cause instant madness and suicide when seen. The story follows a woman named Mallory, played by Sandra Bullock, as she attempts to survive and protect two children in a world where keeping your eyes closed is the only way to stay alive. The creatures are never shown. No one knows what they are or where they came from. Different people see different things. Some are driven to immediate death, while others become obsessed and worship the entities. Most of the film takes place with the characters blindfolded, trying to navigate both urban and wilderness environments. The fear is constant and internal. Every decision is based on trust, sound, and instinct. There's no confrontation, only avoidance. While some critics focus on its similarities to A Quiet Place, Bird Box carved out its own path with themes of motherhood, grief, and existential horror. It became one of Netflix's biggest hits, sparking viral memes, blindfold challenges, and debates about what the creatures actually are. Directed by Jeffrey A. Brown, The Beach House is a quiet atmospheric horror film that explores infection, environmental decay, and cosmic inevitability. The story follows a young couple who visit a remote beach house, hoping to reconnect. Unexpected visitors arrive, but what begins as a tense interpersonal drama quickly shifts into something far more disturbing. As the night unfolds, a strange fog rolls in from the ocean, bringing with it bizarre changes in the water, the people, and the very air around them. The infection is slow and creeping. At first it's just sickness and confusion, but then come the mutations, the memory loss, the grotesque transformations of human bodies into something alien. The film avoids jump scares and fast pacing, instead opting for an atmosphere of inevitable doom. Shot on a small budget, The Beach House delivers psychological unease through soft visuals, gooey effects, and eerie silence. It's the kind of film that doesn't explain much and doesn't need to. Nature itself seems to have turned against humanity, and what's left behind isn't human anymore. Directed by William Eubank, Underwater takes place at the bottom of the Mariana Trench, where a team of researchers must escape a collapsing deep-sea drilling station. Early in the film, the facility is damaged by what appears to be an earthquake. As the survivors attempt to reach safety, they discover that something massive and ancient has been awakened. The film moves quickly, with little build-up. The main character, played by Kristen Stewart, leads the group through narrow corridors, flooded chambers, and pitch-black ocean floors. Along the way, they are hunted by creatures that are clearly not native to Earth. At first, they appear as small, agile predators. Later, it's revealed that these are only fragments of something much larger. The final creature, only partially seen, resembles a godlike being that dwarfs anything the characters have encountered. It's not explained. It doesn't need to be. Its presence alone redefines the threat. Humanity is no longer at the top of the food chain. Underwater was released with little promotion, but it has since gained attention for its strong cosmic horror elements. The film leaves most of its mythology untouched. That choice makes it more effective. The idea that such a being could exist below us, unnoticed and undisturbed, fits the theme of significance and dread that defined cosmic horror. Directed by Christian Alvard, Pandorum is a science fiction horror film set on a massive spaceship called the Elysium. The film begins with two crew members waking from hypersleep with no memory of who they are or what their mission is. As they explore the ship, they discover that the rest of the crew is missing, the systems are malfunctioning, and something is lurking in the dark. The ship is meant to transport thousands of humans to a new planet after Earth became uninhabitable, but during the journey, something went wrong. The passengers evolved into aggressive mutant-like creatures. Meanwhile, the remaining survivors are scattered and paranoid, each struggling with isolation and fear. The title refers to a condition known as Pandorum, a form of deep space psychosis brought on by sensory deprivation and stress. However, the true horror of the film goes beyond mental breakdown. It suggests that time, memory, and biology can be distorted by the extreme conditions of space and isolation. As the characters dig deeper, they realize the mission has already failed in ways they never expected. The idea of hope or rescue is replaced by a darker understanding of what the ship has become and what they may already be. Pandorum did not succeed commercially, but it developed a loyal following for its grim tone and high-concept horror. It combines the physical threats of mutated monsters with the psychological terror of losing one's mind in an environment that's cold, endless, and uncaring. That's a wrap on part 1. If you stuck around through all 15, you've officially dipped your toes into the weirdest, darkest corners of horror. If you're not sure where to jump in, The Thing is a solid place to start. It's tense, brutal, and still holds up better than most modern horror. And yeah, we're far from done. There's plenty more cosmic madness we haven't touched yet. Part 2 is already coming together, so hit subscribe so you don't miss it.
The Endless is a 2017 indie cosmic horror film by Justin Benson and Aaron Moorhead, who also star as two brothers returning to the cult they escaped as kids. At first, everything seems weird but harmless. Then you notice the people haven't aged. Some claim to have seen God, and time doesn't behave normally here. This film is technically a companion piece to their earlier movie, Resolution, 2012, set in the same universe and expanding on its themes. Both films deal with an invisible, possibly alien force that traps people in time loops, forcing them to relive events endlessly. Some loops reset every few seconds, others last days. No one knows who or what is doing it. Shot on a tiny budget in Southern California, The Endless became a cult hit after premiering at Tribeca. It's known for turning a basic desert cult story into something much bigger, an exploration of free will, perception, and cosmic indifference. theologian Lucio Fulci, The Beyond is part of his unofficial Gates of Hell trilogy and is often cited as one of the best examples of European cosmic horror. Released in 1981, the film follows a woman who inherits a Louisiana hotel, unaware that it sits atop one of the 7 gateways to hell. The plot is fragmented and surreal by design. Strange accidents begin happening around the hotel. People die, come back wrong, and hallucinations intensify. There's a Book of Abon, a mysterious blind woman, and a painter who may or may not have returned from the dead. It's dream logic. Events don't connect in a traditional sense, and that's intentional. Fulci's strength lies in atmosphere over narrative. He prioritizes dread, decay, and the idea that reality's falling apart. By the final act, the characters step into a literal void, a cosmic realm of nothingness, suggesting that death isn't an end, but a doorway to incomprehensible horror. Though not mainstream, The Beyond has become a cult staple for fans of Lovecraftian terror done through the lens of Italian horror's excess, gore, chaos, and surrealism with no escape. Black Mountainside is a 2014 Canadian indie horror film directed by Nick Sostakowski. Set in the snowy wilderness of northern Canada, it follows a team of archaeologists who discover an ancient pre-Ice Age structure buried in the permafrost. The structure appears to have no cultural link to known civilizations, suggesting the presence of a forgotten and possibly non-human culture. Soon after the discovery, the team begins to experience paranoia, hallucinations, and violent behavior. Their communications break down, supplies dwindle, and isolation takes hold. The influence appears to come from a mysterious figure, something appearing as a talking deer, that may be connected to the structure and is slowly driving the team mad. The film is a spiritual cousin to John Carpenter's The Thing, sharing themes of distrust, isolation, and psychological decay. What makes Black Mountainside stand out in cosmic horror is its explanation of ancient alien intelligence and psychological manipulation, without showing much at all. The horror lies in the suggestion that human minds can't withstand contact with whatever built that ruin. Directed by Jonathan Glazer and released in 2013, Under the Skin is a British science fiction film starring is a folklorist investigating strange reports of alien activity in rural Vermont. The story involves the Migo, a race of fungus-like extraterrestrials capable of extracting human brains and preserving them in canisters. Their motivations are never fully explained, but they appear to serve some cosmic force and conduct experiments far beyond human understanding. The protagonist, skeptical at first, is gradually pulled into a conspiracy that leaves him questioning reality and his own fate. The film was praised for its faithfulness to Lovecraft's tone and era, emulating 1930s horror cinema. While it expands on the original story in its third act, it maintains the central Lovecraftian fear that humanity is at the mercy of cold, powerful beings whose goals don't align with ours. It's niche, but one of the most loyal visual representations of Lovecraftian cosmic horror to date. Directed by Danny Boyle, Sunshine is a 2007 sci-fi horror film that begins as a space survival thriller but gradually veers into existential cosmic horror. Set in the year 2057, the film follows a crew of astronauts tasked with reigniting the dying sun using a massive nuclear payload. As they near their destination, they encounter the wreck of a previous failed mission, and everything begins to unravel. What starts as a science-driven narrative turns disturbing when the crew discovers that the original ship's captain has gone mad. He believes that humans are not meant to approach the divine, and that their very presence near the sun is an affront to nature. He becomes a vessel for destruction, claiming that the closer one gets to cosmic power, the less human they remain. Sunshine explores themes of hubris, isolation, and the frailty of human consciousness in the face of cosmic scale. Boyle blends realistic science with surreal imagery, leading to an ending that leaves viewers questioning what they just saw. It's a film that asks not just whether we can save ourselves, but whether we deserve to. Before the Endless, directors Justin Benson and Aaron Moorhead released Resolution in 2012, a micro-budget indie horror that quietly laid the groundwork for their larger shared universe. The film begins with a simple setup. A man chains his drug-addicted friend to a wall in a remote cabin to force him into detox, but something isn't right. Strange tapes begin appearing, showing events from the past, alternate versions of the present, and even possible futures. The two friends slowly realize they're being watched by an invisible, omniscient and a strange force compels residents to seek spiral perfection. The film doesn't offer a clear origin, it simply suggests that the spiral is a force of cosmic significance, one that humans are powerless to resist or understand. The movie adapts only part of the manga, and its limited budget led to mixed visuals, but the core idea remains chilling. What if geometry itself had agency? In Ito's universe, horror isn't always about gods or demons. It can be something as simple and eternal as a pattern that infects the world like a virus. And there you have it, 15 more films that pulled back the curtain on something vast, ancient, and unknowable. If you're not sure where to begin, The Endless hits that perfect balance of mystery and menace. But if you want something that lingers, Under the Skin will haunt you for days. We've barely scratched the surface of what cosmic horror has to offer, but the list so far, not a bad place to start losing sleep. Drop your personal picks in the comments, stick around, there's more coming. Released in 2018 and directed by Philip Gillette, They Remain is a low-budget cosmic horror film that focuses more on mood and psychological breakdown than overt scares. It's based on the short story 30 by Laird Barron, a modern author known for blending noir, wilderness survival, and cosmic dread. The story follows two scientists, Keith and Jessica, who are sent to a remote forest to study strange patterns in animal behavior. The twist? That forest is where a cult once carried out a series of grisly ritual killings. Their job is to collect data and monitor environmental changes, but as days pass, the lines between observation and obsession begin to blur. Nothing in this film comes with clear answers. Strange noises, flickers of movement on surveillance footage, and subtle shifts in memory and emotion all build toward a creeping sense that the forest is aware, and possibly feeding on them. The horror here is internal, slow, and quiet. The film was shot using a minimal cast elaborate body transformations, and massive destruction sequences, all done practically.
Tobe Hooper's direction keeps things visually intense, sometimes to the point of overwhelming. Despite being a box office failure during its initial release, Lifeforce was backed by a surprisingly large budget, reportedly around $25 million, courtesy of Cannon Films. Much of that money went into the ambiguous sets and special effects, which remain one of the film's strongest points. A heavily edited US version confused many viewers, but the international cut helped build the film's cult status over time. Phantoms, directed by Joe Chappelle and based on Dean Koontz's 1983 novel, is a film that starts as a murder mystery and evolves into something rooted in cosmic horror. It was released in 1998 and stars Ben Affleck, Peter O'Toole, Rose McGowan, and Lev Schreiber. The story follows two sisters who return to a remote Colorado mountain town only to find nearly the entire population mysteriously dead. Phones are silent, streets are empty, bodies lie untouched, with no clear cause of death. Soon, they're joined by a small team of investigators, including a former military man and a disgraced scientist who believes he's seen this phenomenon before. What begins as a mystery of mass death quickly shifts into something more existential. There's no murderer, there's no disease. The culprit is an ancient sentient entity that has existed beneath the earth for millions of years. Known as the Ancient Enemy, this being has the ability to absorb knowledge, mimic life, and manipulate physical matter. It can manifest your worst fears, use dead bodies as puppets, and control reality within its influence. The film starts with scientific explanations, referencing the creature's origins as possibly microbial in nature, an ancient form of life that evolved consciousness underground. But no matter how the characters try to rationalize it, the entity defies full understanding. While Phantoms received mixed reviews and underperformed commercially, it remains a notable example of late 90s cosmic horror. Critics were divided, with some pointing to its tonal inconsistencies and uneven pacing. Others appreciated its ambition and Lovecraftian themes. The special effects are typical of the era, blending practical effects with early CGI, and while they haven't aged flawlessly, they still support the film's eerie tone. Dark Waters, not to be confused with the 2019 environmental thriller of the same name, is a 1993 Italian-Ukrainian film directed by Mariano Baino. It's one of the lesser-known but most atmospheric entries in the cosmic horror genre. The story follows a young woman named Elizabeth who travels to a remote island to uncover the truth about her late father and the eerie convent that received his financial support. The island is bleak, wind-battered, and isolated. The convent is ancient, decaying, and filled with nuns who seem more like silent watchers than caretakers of any faith. As Elizabeth begins to dig into her family's history, she finds strange symbols, ancient tomes, hidden tunnels, and an unsettling mural depicting a monstrous deity. The film was shot largely on location in Ukraine, giving it a stark and genuinely unsettling backdrop that amplifies its otherworldly tone. The production had a very limited budget, which meant fewer special effects and more practical, handmade set designs. But that constraint ended up working in its favor, as it made the film feel raw and real, as though we're seeing something that was never meant to be unearthed. And despite limited distribution and virtually no marketing, Dark Waters gained a cult following through home video and horror festivals. Directed by Stanley Kubrick and released in 1968, 2001: A Space Odyssey is not traditionally categorized as horror, but its influence on cosmic horror is profound and undeniable. Co-written by Kubrick and science fiction author Arthur C. Clarke, the film explores humanity's relationship with the unknown, AI, and the potential insignificance of mankind in the vast scale of the cosmos. The story begins in prehistoric times, with early humans encountering a mysterious black monolith. This artifact sparks a leap in intelligence, symbolizing a nudge from an advanced extraterrestrial force. The film then jumps to the future, where another monolith is discovered on the moon, emitting a signal toward Jupiter. A spaceship, the Discovery 1, is dispatched to investigate. On board is HAL 9000, an advanced AI that eventually begins malfunctioning with deadly consequences. But the final act of the film is where cosmic horror truly enters. As astronaut Dave Bowman reaches Jupiter, he encounters a third monolith. What follows is a visual journey known as the Stargate sequence, an abstract and disorienting trip through space, time, and perception. Dave arrives in an otherworldly room, undergoes a rapid transformation, and ultimately becomes the Star Child, a higher being reborn under alien guidance. Kubrick never explains what the monoliths are or who created them. That ambiguity is the point, as the film doesn't offer closure, but instead confronts the viewer with lots of questions. The production of 2001 was groundbreaking. Its visual effects, designed years before CGI existed, were revolutionary. The film's realistic depiction of space travel and silence in the vacuum of space lent it an eerie, sterile tone. The use of classical music instead of a traditional score made every moment feel cold and calculated. At the time of release, 2001: A Space Odyssey divided audiences. Some saw it as a masterpiece, others found it pretentious or confusing, but over the decades, its legacy has only grown. It's now regarded as one of the greatest films ever made and perhaps the most successful cinematic representation of the cosmic sublime. The Mothman Prophecies, directed by Mark Pellington and released in 2002, adapts John A. Keel's 1975 nonfiction book of the same name. While marketed as a supernatural thriller, the film leans heavily into cosmic horror territory by focusing not on direct terror, but on the unknowable and the unexplained. It draws from real-life reports surrounding the mysterious sightings of the Mothman in Point Pleasant, West Virginia during the late 60s. The story follows Washington Post journalist John Klein, played by Richard Gere, who stumbles into the small town of Point Pleasant after a strange incident involving his wife's hallucinations of a winged creature before her death. In the town, he finds others experiencing visions, phone calls with no origin, time anomalies, and warnings that suggest a future disaster. At the center of it all is the Mothman, an entity that doesn't harm people directly, but leaves them disturbed, confused, and changed. What separates the Mothman Prophecies from typical horror is its commitment to ambiguity. The Mothman itself is never fully shown. The film makes no attempt to clarify this. Instead, it immerses viewers in the psychological and existential uncertainty that defines cosmic horror. The film's tone is bleak and somber. The cinematography uses shadows, distant sounds, and dim lighting to suggest a reality that's just slightly out of phase. The sound design also adds to the creeping dread, and although the film was a moderate box office success, it has become a cult favorite in cosmic horror circles for how it portrays dread. Directed by Andrew Patterson, The Vast of Night, 2019, is a micro-budget indie film that takes place in 1950s New Mexico, unfolding over a single night in a sleepy town. At first glance, it plays like a nostalgic sci-fi mystery, but beneath the surface, it taps directly into cosmic horror. The story centers on Faye, a teenage switchboard operator, and Everett, a local radio DJ. During their evening shifts, they begin to pick up a strange audio frequency, something not from any known source. As they investigate, they uncover testimonies from people who have heard the signal before, including a former military worker and a reclusive woman who claims her child was taken by something not of this earth. The film leans heavily into minimalism. Much of the tension comes from long takes, extended dialogue, and audio recordings rather than action. Patterson uses long tracking shots and moments of near silence to draw you in and keep you listening. Just like the characters themselves, who are desperate to understand something they were never meant to encounter. Its 1950s setting is more than just a backdrop. The era's Cold War anxiety, paranoia about government cover-ups, and obsession with extraterrestrial life all play directly into the film's tension. The Vast of Night premiered at Slamdance in 2019 and was later released through Amazon Studios. Despite its tiny budget and unknown cast, it received widespread critical acclaim. Its slow-burn pacing and cerebral storytelling drew comparisons to The Twilight Zone, and it quickly found a home among fans of cerebral atmospheric horror. Coherence, 2013, directed by James Ward Burkett, is a low-budget science fiction thriller that gradually transforms into a deeply unsettling piece of cosmic horror. It all begins innocently enough. 8 friends gather for a dinner party on the night a comet is passing overhead. As the night unfolds, power outages and strange occurrences start to blur the line between coincidence and something far more terrifying. The genius of Coherence is that it takes a single location and uses them to unravel reality itself. When the lights go out, the guests discover that their neighborhood has gone dark, except for one other house with the lights still on. As they investigate, they begin to realize that the other house isn't just similar, it's identical. And the people inside? They're alternate versions of themselves. Without special effects or even a formal script, P.S. the dialogue was largely improvised, the film manages to create a growing sense of dread. Burkett, who co-wrote Rango and worked with Gore Verbinski, made Coherence in his own home with a skeleton crew and a few actor friends. The film's tight production schedule and improvisational approach actually enhanced its unsettling tone. Since its release, Coherence has become a cult favorite for fans of cerebral horror and sci-fi. It's frequently recommended as one of the best examples of what can be achieved with limited resources and a strong concept. abandoned NASA shuttle that vanished decades earlier with no trace of its crew. Once they board the ghost shuttle, things begin to unravel fast. One of the crew members starts acting violently, and an unseen presence begins picking them off. But instead of traditional aliens or malfunctioning AI, the threat here is a force that seems more demonic than extraterrestrial. The film borrows elements from Christian mythology, suggesting the force behind the chaos may be satanic, but it wraps this theme in sci-fi language. The film leans heavily on atmospheric dread, and despite its limited resources, The Dark Side of the Moon manages to deliver unsettling visuals, a bleak tone, and a sense that something much bigger and darker than the characters can comprehend is unfolding just out of frame. It was largely overlooked upon release, partly due to its straight-to-video distribution and lack of mainstream promotion, but it has since gained cult appreciation for its ambition and genre-blending approach. Directed by Michele Soavi and produced by Dario Argento, The Church, 1989, is a gothic Italian horror film that drifts into cosmic horror territory through religious paranoia, ancient evil, and a blurring of dimensions. Originally planned as the third entry in the Demons series, the film eventually became a standalone story with a more psychological and metaphysical tone. The plot begins in medieval times, when a group of Teutonic knights massacres an entire village suspected of devil worship. The bodies are buried, and a massive cathedral is built on top of the site to seal in the evil. Centuries later, in modern-day Germany, that very church is undergoing restoration. A young librarian and an art historian begin uncovering strange symbols and hidden chambers, and soon after, all hell breaks loose, literally. What makes The Church lean into cosmic horror is the implication that evil isn't just demonic, but eternal. Visually, the film is drenched in religious iconography, and some of the film's most memorable sequences include ghostly possessions, surreal visions, and violent transformations, all echoing a larger cosmic collapse. The score by Keith Emerson and Philip Glass adds to the disorientation, shifting between operatic grandeur and electronic unease. Soavi's direction moves away from the gore-heavy style of typical Italian horror and instead focuses on tone, architecture, and atmosphere. He takes inspiration from Lovecraft, blending religious horror with unknowable dread. Directed by Giordano Giolivi, The Laplace's Demon, 2017, is a black-and-white Italian indie film that dives deep into the philosophical roots of determinism and cosmic horror. Named after Pierre-Simon Laplace's famous thought experiment, the film imagines a world where every action and outcome can be predicted if enough data is known. The story follows a group of scientists invited to a remote island mansion under mysterious circumstances. They've been working on a predictive algorithm, one capable of forecasting human behavior with frightening accuracy. Once inside, they discover they're being watched, not just observed, but predicted. A strange model of the house, complete with miniatures of each guest, shows exactly when and how each person is going to die. The horror here is purely intellectual. One by one, the guests realize that even their attempts to escape or resist are just parts of the prediction. Every choice they make, they were supposed to make. Free will collapses in real time. The film is notable for its visual style. It's entirely shot on a soundstage using rear projection, giving it a vintage aesthetic that feels theatrical and surreal. The Laplace's Demon draws its horror not from a supernatural entity, but from mathematics and philosophy. The demon is the cold realization that we are predictable systems in a deterministic universe. That's where the cosmic dread kicks in. If everything is already known by some higher intelligence, if your death is already decided, what does that make your life? Though the film didn't receive wide distribution, it gained traction on the festival circuit for its originality and ambition. Critics praised it for taking big cerebral risks and crafting a narrative that doesn't numb down its themes. And that wraps up part 3. This one was especially fun to put together, partly because we got to fulfill some viewers' requests. A lot of you asked for some of the titles, and we were happy that we've managed to sneak them in. And if you're new and wondering where to start, Coherence is a solid pick. It's small, smart, and quietly one of the most unsettling takes on alternate realities. If you've been enjoying the series, hit that like button, drop a comment with your favorite pick, and subscribe so you don't miss whatever cosmic weirdness we tackle next. Cryptic Plasm. Directed by Brian Paulin, Cryptic Plasm is an underground indie horror release that leans heavily into surreal, unsettling imagery and a narrative that refuses to be straightforward. Released in 2013, it follows a mysterious drifter who investigates paranormal phenomena in remote areas, only to uncover a spreading otherworldly contamination that twists reality itself. The film unfolds in fragmented sequences, shifting from investigative footage to nightmarish visions. Strange mutations, shifting landscapes, and grotesque practical effects dominate the screen, giving the story a tactile and almost physical sense of decay. The pacing is unconventional, often dwelling on silent, lingering shots that build an oppressive atmosphere. Its strength lies in the way it commits to its own strange logic. Rather than offering a clear explanation, the events grow progressively more alien and incomprehensible, pulling the viewer into the same confusion and dread that the protagonist experiences. This approach gives it a hypnotic pull for those willing to surrender to its rhythm. While it never reached mainstream attention, Cryptic Plasm has earned a reputation among niche horror fans for its dedication to practical effects and its commitment to making the audience feel truly disoriented. It's a rare example of cosmic horror told with the intimacy of underground cinema. Banshee Chapter. Directed by Blair Erickson, Banshee Chapter blends government conspiracy with Lovecraftian unease, creating a story that feels both grounded in real-world paranoia and touched by something truly alien. Inspired loosely by H.P. Lovecraft's From Beyond and real-life CIA mind control experiments, the film follows a journalist investigating the disappearance of a friend who is experimenting with a mysterious drug linked to a government project. Her search takes her deep into the Nevada desert, where she encounters a reclusive counterculture writer and evidence of a broadcast signal that seems to call out from another dimension. The deeper she digs, the more the lines between reality, hallucination, and something far stranger begin to erode. The film's unsettling power comes from its use of found footage elements combined with traditional cinematography. It shifts perspectives without warning, keeping the audience on edge while peppering in moments of sudden, jarring terror. The signal itself becomes a character, its presence felt through distorted audio and inexplicable intrusions. Banshee Chapter remains an underseen gem in the realm of modern cosmic horror, earning praise for its mix of real historical intrigue and skin-crawling otherworldly horror. The Borderlands. The Outwaters. Written and directed by Robbie Banfinch, The Outwaters is a found footage nightmare that begins with an almost mundane tone before plunging into pure chaos. Presented as footage recovered from memory cards found in the Mojave Desert, it initially follows a small group of friends traveling to shoot a music video. The early part of the film is deliberately slow, showing long stretches of road trips, casual conversations, and desert scenery. But once night falls, the tone shifts dramatically. Strange sounds echo in the darkness, lights flash in the distance, and disoriented camera work begins to replace the steady shots from earlier. The footage becomes increasingly fragmented, filled with screams, blood, and unrecognizable shapes. Unlike traditional horror films that explain the nature of the threat, The Outwaters offers no clear answers. Time feels fractured, the environment warps, and the character's descent into terror is captured in messy, visceral bursts. The result is disorienting and exhausting in a way that mirrors the character's experiences. Its combination of cosmic dread, surreal imagery, and raw sensory overload has divided audiences. Some see it as one of the most disturbing found footage films in years, while others find its ambiguity maddening. Either way, it's a bold experiment in horror storytelling that leaves a lasting mark. The Nothing. Directed by Clayton Thompson, The Nothing is a minimalist found footage horror that leans heavily into psychological unease. Shot entirely by Thompson himself, the film follows a lone man documenting his final days in an empty cabin after a mysterious world-ending event. The premise is deceptively simple. He believes that something is out there in the wilderness, watching him. There are no jump scares, no elaborate effects, and almost no other characters. Instead, the terror comes from his gradual mental deterioration, captured through long static shots, whispered journal entries, and small unsettling changes in the environment. Over time, his video diaries shift from rational observations to frantic ramblings. He becomes paranoid about the noises outside, convinced that an unseen force is waiting for the right moment to strike. Whether the threat is real or imagined is never confirmed, and that uncertainty becomes the true source of fear. With its stripped-down production and single-location setting, The Nothing challenges viewers to sit with silence and dread, forcing them to question if they're witnessing supernatural horror or the slow collapse of a man's mind. It's a haunting example of how minimalism can still carry an oppressive cosmic weight. Masking Threshold. Directed by Johannes Grenzfurthner, Masking Threshold is an experimental horror film that merges scientific obsession with existential dread. Presented as a first-person video diary, it follows a reclusive man documenting his attempt to cure a debilitating hearing impairment. At first, the recordings are focused and methodical. He uses microscopes, chemical tests, and sound experiments, detailing every step with meticulous precision. Yet as the days stretch on, the tone shifts. His research begins to branch into occult references, strange patterns in sound waves, and theories about a hidden order in the universe. The camera never leaves his workspace, but the visuals are layered with extreme close-ups, textures, and unsettling audio distortions that create a claustrophobic, almost tactile viewing experience. The more he searches for an answer, the more his sanity unravels. His fixation transforms into a dangerous belief that something sentient is communicating through his condition. By the time the final act arrives, the film has shifted from quirky scientific curiosity to a disturbing descent into madness. Masking Threshold stands out for its ability to blend body horror, cosmic terror, and the language of DIY experimentation into something both deeply personal and horrifying. The Triangle. Created by the filmmaking collective Radio Silence, The Triangle is a found-footage mystery that begins as a documentary and slowly drifts into surreal horror. The story follows a group of journalists invited to visit an isolated commune deep in the Montana wilderness. Initially, the trip feels like a human interest piece. The residents seem peaceful, self-sufficient, and oddly welcoming. As filming continues, subtle oddities emerge. The commune members speak in cryptic terms about a great alignment and seem to share an unshakable, almost telepathic unity. They wear identical white clothing, follow strict routines, and carry themselves with an eerie calm. The journalists notice there's no contact with the outside world, and their questions are often met with rehearsed, evasive answers. Strange symbols appear around the settlement, and at night, the visitors witness bizarre ceremonies under the open sky. The tension builds without flashy scares, relying instead on an overwhelming sense that the crew has stumbled into something ancient and inescapable. When the final revelation comes, it ties the commune's belief to an otherworldly presence that may not be bound by time or reality. The Triangle leaves its ending open, amplifying its unnerving atmosphere long after the screen goes dark. Europa Report. Directed by Sebastián Cordero, Europa Report is a found-footage-style sci-fi thriller that treats its premise with documentary-like realism. The film centers on a privately funded mission to Jupiter's moon Europa, chosen for its potential to harbor extraterrestrial life beneath its icy surface. Told through recovered mission logs, onboard camera feeds, and crew interviews, the story unfolds in a non-linear way, slowly revealing the challenges the astronauts face. The technical malfunctions, communication blackouts, and the psychological strain of deep space travel all begin to erode the crew's resolve. Yet, despite setbacks, their scientific curiosity keeps them pressing forward. Europa itself is depicted as both breathtaking and hostile. The surface is a frozen wasteland, but sensors detect signs of a possible ocean below, hinting at the presence of life. When the crew finally ventures onto the ice, they discover evidence that confirms their suspicions, but the discovery also comes with a danger they could never have prepared for. By blending hard science with mounting tension, Europa Report delivers a grounding yet chilling vision of cosmic horror. The film avoids over-the-top spectacle, instead focusing on the bravery, sacrifice, and vulnerability of those who dare to explore the unknown. Sphere. Nuclear submarine. While operating miles beneath the surface, the crew encounters a mysterious, luminous life form unlike anything seen before. The environment itself is already hostile, crushing pressures, darkness, and unpredictable currents, yet the real intrigue comes from the strange occurrences that start happening after the team's first encounter with the alien presence. Tensions escalate not only from the unknown entity, but also from human conflict, as military orders clash with the divers' instincts for survival. Cameron's meticulous attention to underwater realism grounds the story, while the alien intelligence introduces an otherworldly scale that feels vast yet untouchable. The film shifts between moments of intense technical precision and awe-inspiring visual spectacle, especially in the sequences that reveal the alien's intricate fluid-based technology. By blending human drama, military tension, and an almost ethereal depiction of extraterrestrial life, The Abyss moves beyond typical underwater adventure into a realm that borders on cosmic horror, leaving audiences with both wonder and unease. Ikarie XB-1. This 1963 Czechoslovak science fiction film is a striking example of early Eastern European cosmic horror, blending the optimism of space exploration with the creeping dread of the unknown. Set in the year 2163, the story follows the crew of the starship Ikarie XB-1 in a long journey to explore a mysterious planet orbiting Alpha Centauri. At first, their mission is one of scientific discovery and hope for contact with other civilizations, but as the voyage progresses, the crew encounters strange, unsettling phenomena. They stumble upon a derelict ship from the 20th century, its crew long dead in bizarre circumstances, and a mysterious dark star whose radiation begins to affect their minds and bodies. The horror here is subtle, buried beneath the sleek retro-futuristic designs and idealistic space-age visions. The tension grows from the suggestion that deep space holds dangers beyond human comprehension, and that even the most advanced technology may not be enough to protect them. Ikarie XB-1 influenced later genre milestones, including 2001: A Space Odyssey, and remains a fascinating example of early Eastern Bloc cosmic horror that relied on mood, realism, and philosophical undertones to unsettle its audience. And that wraps up part 4 of our journey through cosmic horror. If you want a starting point from this list, The Abyss is a perfect blend of human drama and the awe of encountering something truly alien beneath the ocean's surface. For a more unsettling experimental experience, Masking Threshold draws you into the mind of a man whose obsession leads him into territory far darker than science can explain. If you've been enjoying this series, like the video, share your favorite cosmic horror entry in the comments, and subscribe so you don't miss where we'll dive into more chilling stories.